Hey,
Hi, Samek. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for making the presenter. And then I was just having another session, so I got a bit late. And then, yeah, sorry
Yes,
for
I
that.
know you're speaking back to back. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a back to back speaker tonight. He just got out of his last session and just made it in time for this one. And so, a very hot commodity this evening. Thank you, Samek, for joining. I'm going to turn it over to you, my friends. You can go ahead and begin your presentation, and I'm going to begin the recording.
Thanks. So I'll just try sharing my screen, and then if you could just let me know if you see my screen.
Sure. Yes, I can. Coming in crystal clear.
Thanks for confirmation. And I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening based on the time where you are in right now. And also would like to thank you all for taking out your time to attend this session. And also would like to thank all the organizers and all the moderators who has made this possible. Right? Yeah. So with that said, I'll just strictly jump into the session. And this session is mostly focused on live demos. So I'll be spending mostly, on that most time in browser itself and showing you all that how the tool works and how we can adopt the tool. And I would definitely like to have some questions during the session. So please feel free to stop me and raise hands the way you want to. So thanks again. And then with that, this is my Twitter handle, and then I'll just move on to my next slide. Yeah. So as I said, it the event we are here, it's like definitely been possible only for this organizers as well as the moderators and the entire team over here to bring us to such a beautiful platform for sharing our learnings. All right. Now, now I've just tried to keep the agenda a little bit different. So just we'll see why we need Azure Sentinel, and then the moment we finish it up, we'll just strictly jump into the portal and then see the tool from here and there, with the aspects we want to see how it is going to help us in terms of security, and then why it's cloud only SIEM, and then what are the potential it has, and then and all those things will be definitely covered as a part of demo. So we'll be seeing it live in action, the tool how it works, and definitely would like to have some question and answer. But nevertheless, please pitch in if you want have some question during the discussion, right? And then we will just try to conclude everything that once we have the base setup, right? How do we move on to the Sentinel to next level, or what should the roadmap look like for any organization who is going to deploying Sentinel, or for those who have already deployed Sentinel and then they have a little bit ahead on their journey. That said, so myself, I just work as a developer in a cloud security company called Open System, and I work based out of a place called Bangalore in India. And definitely, this is my Twitter handle, Roy_Samik. You can also send me an email, or just try to send a message in LinkedIn for any queries you have on cloud security or any SOC or anything related to SIEM, and as well as any other products basically in cloud. Right, I'll be definitely happy to help. And I have been a kind of mostly a developer throughout my career, and I do community speaking as well as I had some contribution to Sentinel repo itself. Right. Yeah. Now let's start why Azure Sentinel. The reason I just picked up this question over here, right? That we wanted to see that why we need Sentinel as a tool, and then what's like a drawback, and then what's like a drawback we had in our previous system, and why it has become so important in these days, like what exactly it is right now doing, right? So with that said, I'll just say So with that said, I'll just try to bring us a graph what basically it looks like, right? So now if we just look at the screen we have, so from the inception of cloud, right? And then it's been a couple of years now where has all the cloud vendors, either it be Microsoft, it be Google platform, or it's Amazon, they have reached up to their potential as well as a certain amount of maturity, right? And the moment they reach on maturity, they have their ecosystem spread out across the places. So we can see the companies build connected cars. So anything you just drive on the road, the car on the road, and then that data gets captured into cloud, and then that helps another car to understand their navigation and build automated systems. We also have concept of smart cities where there's nothing manual, right? You enter a gate, it opens automatically, and and nevertheless there's a big part of it like the sensors. So if you look at, there are swimming pools, they are heater controlled, and they are all sensor based. And all these solutions basically are supported. The inception is definitely from Microsoft, but these are already supported by Microsoft partners, right? So what happens, what's happened, and also there is a concept from a development start standpoint. There is a concept coming in, of citizen developers. So what citizen developer does is, like, they are like, they are engaged for a project. They are not a part of the company, but they are engaged in a project for a particular time span, and then they just take themselves out of that project once they are done. With that said, that gives us a lot more flexibility of the skill set, but as well as that gives a lot of threat because they are not abide by the norms, or like, they are not a part of organization for a longer time. So we definitely need to go to a zero trust model where we just monitor everybody's activity, and then we don't keep any loose ends. And um, and and one more fact is, like, the mobile devices, it's ever growing, right? And we have other sectors as well where we have this automation and then sensor data in. So with all these data, right, till now there was hardly a tool, right, or same tool which was able to find out what's going on with the data, and then how to read the data, and then basically what to do with the data, right? So now we have really huge amount of data sitting in cloud, but Microsoft has introduced Sentinel to read it out and then make sense out of it, and then let organizations take action and find the security loopholes and tighten them. So that's kind of a brief background, I would say, about the inception of Sentinel. So again, Sentinel, and the next part here is Sentinel is just a cloud only SIEM, but that's like, I've not defined the myth, but it's not only cloud. Now Sentinel has the extended capabilities to get data from either it's on-prem, if it's from another cloud vendor, anywhere basically in cloud or on-prem, and then assess that data of within machine learning capabilities, and then give fruitful result, and then build a security and response system around it. And this is and there's one more USP for Sentinel. It also has the capability of automated response around the use cases. For example, if we just see there's a phishing attack happening in the user mailbox, right, we can definitely configure a automated response to either disable the user from Active Directory or just kill all his sessions. So this is what Sentinel is in a nutshell. Uh, now, if we look at Sentinel as a tool from a technical perspective, right, it's basically what it does. It completes the cycle of threat detection. So when you say the cycle, that means starting from data collection, and then making sense of the data, and then finding the anomaly or finding the threat out of it, and further to it, hunt the data down for the forensics, and also investigate what was the root cause behind that. And once we have all the things in place, it's just a matter of responding it and remediating it. So and going forward, the moment we get to know similar kind of anomalies, we will definitely do a particular fix, and that can go for an automation. And all this is possible in a single platform called Azure Sentinel, offered by Microsoft. And again, the tool has, if you look at the navigation of the tool has three categories. One is general, one is threat management, and one is configuration. The general thing talks about the whereabouts of the tool, and the threat management talks about how to find a threat out of the data, and configuration is mostly about setting up the tool, bringing the data from throughout the places, and the configuration and so on. So with that said, we will just quickly try to jump onto Azure portal and see how the Sentinel console look like, and what it has to offer for us. So with that, I will quickly jump on to my Azure subscription where we have logged in, and the way we navigate, we come here, we just quickly type Azure Sentinel and we click on them. So just a bit more background about Sentinel is it always sits on a log analytics workspace. So that's basically one of the renowned data sources or data storage what Microsoft has to offer, and that has its huge capability of storing any amount of data it has. So we can enable Sentinel on top of log analytics workspace, and Sentinel has its own capability of incident management system, having all the dependencies deployed, and then we have the Sentinel environment with us. Now, if we just try to look at one of our Sentinel environment, which you basically look at for a demo perspective, and yeah, so first I'd like to definitely start from the left navigation because that's the crucial part is, and as a security analyst or a SOC manager, we definitely focus on the left hand side first so that we understand more, and then we can leverage the tool at all times high, right? So the first one is overview, and then on the right hand side you can see that there are some basic metrics. So if we talk about the events, it has 34.4 million events, and then 1.4k alerts, and around 750 odd incidents. And also this is a flexibility of giving a filter of data. So right now we are seeing it for last 24 hours. We can always go for 48 hours, 7 days, 13 days, and then 14 days, and for custom range. So it also gives us the flexibility of pinpointing the time we want to see. Now, and also it has some other metrics. So like Sentinel has its own machine learning algorithm to understand, for example, this Kubernetes inventory or the device event, which is basically outsourced from Microsoft Defender. So it has anomaly. That's because maybe we had an event, or we have most machine used. So the device event was kind of peak at 11 p.m. and this is what the anomaly detection already Sentinel has it in its place, right? And it also have that flexibility to bring your own machine learning model and then create incident out of that. So this is like the fundamentals or the basics of overview in the general. Next one is the logs. So logs is the moment we click on logs, right? It takes us to the engine sitting behind Sentinel, which is log analytics. And then I'll just try to skip it for now so that we just directly jump into the screen. And then this gives us basically a online editing tool to read our queries. And just to mention that log analytics is just a read-only database. So once we enter, it's all reading the data, and then because it's mostly used for security management and then log management, so it's a read-only database. So now if you look at this console, I'll just try to type in some random stuff here. So I just type sign in, and it also have something like intelligence, and then I'll just stay run, and yeah. So this data set is definitely available in this workspace, right? But having said that, this Explorer has the capability of doing the queries from another workspaces, so as Sentinel, so that we can bring our data from any other log sources like a storage account or any external data source or any CSV file, whatever we want to do, right? So that's pretty much it about this logs overview. And the third one is definitely, I would say it's like we don't see it, but it's really useful. So we have a timeline, and then if you look at the latest updates, Sentinel has a very frequent record of updates, so you can always find something, what is coming soon and what's the new feature, and that helps us using the tool in a better way, and then sometime explore the hidden features. And it also have a tab for get started, and that's basically a fundamental flow of what a Sentinel is. So we collect data, we create security alerts, and then we automate and orchestrate. So yeah, and once we click on create or click on connect, it takes us to the place where you want to be. Yeah, it takes us right away to the particular data connector. So now I'll just quickly jump back to news and guides. Now I'll just come back to threat management at the end, because the next thing we should be doing is the configuration. So for example, we have a company which is having 100,000 user base, right? And they have their Office 365 licenses in place and sign-in logs in place. But they are all like not stored. They are just getting flushed out after a period of time, because Azure doesn't retain the logs for them. So what we do is we just go to data connectors. We just go to data connectors, and then we can see Microsoft has around 99 connectors, and then all those things. And this is basically based out of open source community. So it's day by day it's growing. So mostly you can get all the connectors you want to. So if I just type in Office, right, Office activity. Now you see open connector page on the right hand side of the data or the data connector. It just shows up what's the current state, because it is connected. So it says it's connected, it says with the provider, it says when was the last log received, and it has some related content like the queries, the rules, and then the workbooks, which we'll try to cover in a short while. And it also gives us a graph, a relative graph of data being ingested, right? So Office activities predominantly ingesting data for SharePoint, Exchange, and Teams, and each has its own graph. So now we see, as a org and as a demo environment, Exchange is always the high rated piece, because that's the mail and that's the part, right? So yeah, so this graph also tests the same thing, and it also talks about what are the data types being connected. So and all those things are basically nothing but a KQL query, which you have seen as a part of logs. So everything, this entire data set, whatever you see here, all the queries are already a part of a community template. So now if I click on open connector page, what happens here is the moment you open it up, once it loads, right, on the left hand side we see what we saw on the right hand side in our previous screen, and on the right hand side we just see the instruction how to configure. And we can definitely have multiple tenants pushed in the same environment, right? Yeah. Now, and it also talks about the prerequisite: you have to be a global admin or have to be a security admin to perform this activity. So once we configure, right, we have different set of recommended workbooks, we have queries, and we have just the analytic rules to find out the event. So, and once we have connected here, right, in the next step, let's say if we want to test out really we have the data coming in or not. So we have a small run button here. We just click on that, and if you observe the navigation flow of this, right, what happens is it takes us to the log analytics workspace, and then it also copies the query which is indented, and then it just runs, and we can see the result in a short while, so that we understand what we see in the data connectors. That's basically nothing but the data setting in log analytics, and the engine is also intelligent that we are running a heavy query, because it's something, we're trying to get it on an entire data set. Yeah, so we just get the data set here. With that said, I'll again jump back to the previous one by discarding the change and jump back to the data connectors page and close all. So now if you look at, there are different providers, right? This is like there are different providers of data connectors, and then there are data types, right? And there's status, which is connected, non-connected. But if we look at this from a logical perspective, there are three kind of data connectors we can see here. One, which basically takes the log data out of any data sources. So if we take an example of office activity, this one, right, this is basically we have office activity logs, and that is getting pulled in. So that's a flat data. Type 2 is defender logs. So defender logs is like sorry, type, so it's like there are some other third party vendors or some other Microsoft products which basically forwards the alerts here. So that's like type 2. So now if we just go to another example here, I just should be able to see it, and I'll just say if I can see Azure information protection as a storage account, there is. So let's search for, okay, let's see if I can find Defender preview cloud app security. So we can just inject the MCAS data directly to security alert. So any and every alert is raised in MCAS, that's going to come here, get forwarded, and then sit in Sentinel, so that this becomes a common repository for us to do our incident management. And type 3 can be, so as we know, in the world of security, there are different vendors who provide indicators of compromise, that is IOCs, right? So if I just go to threat intelligence or taxi or TI platform, so this is basically a TI data which is like can be fed either by MISP or maybe taxi is another open source framework. So that's kind of a type 3 connector, I would say, logical way of thinking it. And type 4 is like, that is not pretty much visible here, but for example, you have a custom application or you have something very specific to your organization which is not a very generic one, but still you want to ingest that data over in Sentinel. So we have a logic app, or we have different ways of ingesting data, and that basically creates a custom table in Sentinel. So that's like, I'd say, the connector number 4. So we can have 4 different types of logical data connectors, just so that we understand the difference between them, and then we use them the way we should be. And once we have the analytics, maybe there are cases like case 1, there might be a previous SIEM the organization was using, or we are just exploring Azure Sentinel as a part of new security system. Right now, if I just go back to analytics, so what we basically do, if we have an existing SIEM tool which was being monitored by Sentinel, right, or sorry, any other of SIEM, so we might be having certain analytics or certain logics to identify the threat. Those are like analytics here. So if we look at analytics, these are nothing but queries running on a frequency just to flag out alerts. So now if we look at the creation option, there are 2 different options of creation. So if we just click on Microsoft incident creation rule, what happens in here is, as we said, there are different ways of connectors, right? So there are alert forwarders. So all those vendors, or all those Microsoft products which have the capability to send the alert to Sentinel, we can see a list of them. And then we can just define, like, for example, if we want to have let's say only high fidelity alerts to MCAS to raise an incident in Sentinel. So that's like a Microsoft incident creation rule. So we have an alert forwarded, we just create an incident out of it. That's like type 1 of incident. Type 2 is scheduled query rule. So how that works is, that works on a framework called MITRE. We just give a name called test rule. Okay, sign in outside US. So let's say we want to build an analytic which is going to flag us, if a company is having our head office in the US or UK. So any sign-ins out of that, we want to get an alert, right? So what we do is we just give it a name, and then we write some meaningful description, and then the tactics is like, basically it's a MITRE framework thing, and it's based out of MITRE, right? So we can just say initial access for that matter, and this is just a tag. This is just nothing sitting behind that. And we can always define the severity, if it's low, medium, or high, if we want to make it high. And the next thing is set rule logic. So what we do is, let me try and duplicate the tab so that we can write the query in a bit faster way. So here, sign in logs where location not equal to US. So that's pretty much it. We say location not in US, and then we just create a alert of every 5 minutes. So you can change it in minutes, and we can change this also in minutes. So every 5 minutes, this is going to look at last 5 minutes sign in logs, and if there is one such alert, like if there is a sign, it's going to raise an incident. So that's pretty much it. And there is another one for incident settings. So we might or might not create an incident out of it, and we also can group the incident at times if we need to, right? And then we can definitely select some automated response. So when you say automated response, for example, we are having in this, right, we are able to get that machine, like from which machine the user is logging in. So what we can do is, if we find that suspicious, we can just block the user. We can have automation, like these are not out of the box thing, but these are like custom built automation. So or we can tell them at a playbooks or logic apps. Yeah, we can always have them, so that any such kind of incident gets created, right? This is going to be the first investigation step. And then finally, once we do this, we see all the settings, and then we create it, right? And for example, if we are in the process of building but we don't want to lose the query, so in general there's an option to disable it. So if my half of the query is written, right, and I just don't want to run that yet, just disable and then keep it that way. So that's kind of a creating a scheduled incident in Sentinel, right? Now the third one is watch list. This is a preview feature, as you can see, but I would say this is a very useful feature for Sentinel, and a good use case can be like, you have in your organization, you have, let's say, office in 50 places, and you have a range of their public IP addresses. So for example, today a user logs in and he goes to the proxy sitting in an office in India, and tomorrow the same user, for some reason, he logs in and then he goes to the proxy, which is in US. So what Microsoft is going to do is, Microsoft Identity Platform will find out the anomaly, and then that can raise an alert called unfamiliar sign in. So what we can do is, we can just try to create a list of watch list of IPs if we want to have, and then store it in this watch list as a CSV file, and that can be used as a reference when we build our custom analytics, right? Now, once we have this watch list, and the same way, right, if we want to write an analytic rules which we only want to run it for our domain controllers. So we just wrap all domain controllers into a CSV file, and then when we build a watch list, right, we can just say that these are the list of domain controllers you should look for. So we don't get any false positive for user machine, for example. Next one is, it's automation. So automation is, there are automation rules, and there are like playbooks. So mostly the playbook piece is like, we can create logic apps, and which can be tagged as a trigger, right? So any incident gets created, or if there's an incident created, for example, you have identified, or defender had identified a file hash as a malicious one. So we can have an automation that can go to virus total as an external source, and then pass that hash and checks against it, right? Is that a really bad hash or a good hash? And another example could be, if we have like unfamiliar sign in, or any other typical sign in activities, or impossible travel raised from IP, and that is not either Microsoft IP or any other office IP. So we can have a logic app which can go to any of the IP providers or any of the APIs, pass that IP, and then get more information about the IP address. So that's kind of a thing we can do it in automation. So if we just talk about automation, right, there are two different logical segregation to look at it. One, the automation which enriches the alert, and type two, which basically takes action. So as an example, when you say, if we really want to check a hash in virus total and then write back to Sentinel, so that's like more information gathering. So that's like enrichment of incidents, right? But if we have a impossible travel, or if we have a outside US sign in, and if we want to disable that user, right, or maybe isolate that machine, so that can be an action playbook. So anything automated can be also tagged to Sentinel. So that's like the orchestration we can do. And next one, I'll definitely go to community tab, and this is like self-explanatory, because Sentinel has a, so you just go ahead and then you say GitHub Azure Sentinel. So I do it more frequently. The first thing comes here. We have anything and everything what I need to do, I need to get in Sentinel over here. So this is really, really a good place to find things. And then there are a lot of contributions happening even. So if you look at the last, it's like, it's always live, right? So with that said, we come back to settings. So settings is just more of a pricing piece here. What happens here is like, as we said, log analytics has its own gigabyte based consumption plan, or the billing plan, right? But when you enable Sentinel on top of it, there is some additional cost out of that. So that's like, as you see, our current tier is pay as you go, and then it gets charged, per GB basis. But if you have like, you can also you can have also a dedicated capacity planning. So what happens with that is like, if your limit exceeded, you don't have the data ingested. So yeah, and but that's a lot more cheaper, that's for sure. So we have the settings. So we have certain things, and then these are like more like to read things. We have what permission we need, and then once we have how to use the data, and then maybe once we have the demo setup done, if we want to step back and remove Sentinel, how to do that even. And also this has another link, like as we spoke earlier, that Azure workbook is Azure Sentinel is sitting on a log analytics workspace. So yeah, that settings takes us to the log analytics things, and then this is basically the another product what Azure offers for log management, right, or monitoring. That's pretty much it about the settings thing. So yeah, now coming to the threat management, right? So if we just look at the topmost one, which is incident. So as it's a scene, right, it's going to create incidents, and we as a user or as a SOC or a security person going to work on that. So if you look at any incident raised, so if let's collapse this for some time, and then we have really same filters what we want to do. We have action, we have automation rules, or we haven't have even a workbook, right, which we'll be talking in a short while what workbook is. So, and we have a basic summary over here, and we have certain filters to find out the incidents, and by default it doesn't show close because it's the job is done, right? Now the product name, there are 10, and the owner is basically, if there are multiple SOC people, we can filter out that who is working on what. And it also has a search field. If I search for 39, it's gonna give me all the incident. 39923. Yep, that's pretty much it. So about the search. Now coming back to that, let me just try to hit enter, and then it shows up. So you can see the product names, right? So when the product is Azure Sentinel, that's bound to be a incident created rule when you talk about analytics, right? But when the products are different, so let's say Microsoft Defender, what does it mean is like, there was an alert raised in Microsoft Defender, and that Microsoft Defender is basically identified that as a suspicious brute force, and then that has forwarded to Sentinel, and Sentinel has re-raised the alert like as a high severity or medium severity. And when you click on the incident on the right hand side, we have certain basic information, and we have evidences, and we have bookmarks, and we have entities. So we'll just talk in a bit about the entities, and then the incident workbook. And it also shows us on which analytic rule this incident was created, right? And this also incident link. And definitely like any other ticketing system or case management system, it has a basic functionality of commenting out and then defining it as something like that. So if I want to change the status to close, it's going to ask me is a true positive or benign positive, the way standard based SIEM works, right? I'm going to cancel it for now. There are two different ways of look at it. So the right side information is primitive, right? If you really want to see the same thing in a bigger window, I'm going to click here and see the details over here on the left hand side again, and then just click on that. it gives us some more information of the alert ID and all. And whenever you click a hyperlink, right? So if I just click on test, let me try clicking on test, or it takes time sometimes. So yeah, I'll just quickly come back here. Yeah, so that's basically about view details, and we can also have something called investigate. So what happens when you click on investigate is Sentinel has its own way of finding relation about things and then try to relate. So if you look at the incident, right, it's as simple as that. That was raised by user and around a test user and a guest user, and it was like done on a Windows 7 machine, something like that. Now coming back to that, as I say, this is a forward alert, right? So in this forward alert, we don't have any events because this was identified by another system, and it was forwarded to Sentinel. But on the same time, if we just go to one of the incident which is raised by Sentinel, so that's be like a security incident, that's like a scheduled query, right? uh, we see events here, and the moment you click on events, right, as I spoke about log analytics, so that's gonna bring us the exact time frame for which the incident is raised. If you look at here, it's highlighted, and it also runs the query which we have created the analytic rule for, and shows the result. So this is definitely a good place for a SOC analyst, right, to find out what is the data source and then find out more details about it just from the Sentinel screen itself. Now, if we, that's basically about the incident things, and next would be the workbook. So what workbook is like? Workbook is a Microsoft offering tightly coupled with Sentinel to visualize data. So when you talk about visualize data, right, either we can measure the data what is there like as a flat data, or we can measure like the metrics as. So for example, if I just go to my workbooks, or if I just go back to incidents, right, there's a workbook link here, security efficiency workbook. So let me just click on that. And there is a lot of metrics arranged all over the place, right? Yeah, so it'll take a time, it'll take some time to load, but these are like mostly visuals. So this is like a performance counter stuff. So whenever we see how a security operation is going on, even we just try to filter it out, all the next graphs basically works on that. Yep. Now if I just go back to workbook for a second, right, so we have templates defined in Microsoft, we can utilize them, and we can also create our workbooks by creating add workbook. And we can also save the same thing from, for example, if we have AWS network activities, we can just view template, or we can just say view save workbook, right? Or if we have something new, we can just always save it out. Azure. So that's pretty much about. So if we just go back to one of the interesting workbooks, let's see how it looks like. So this is mostly of a, again, there are two logical ways of looking at it. One is like data on alert and data on flat data. And if I try to add some filter over here, let's say I'd say how many mail items are accessed the last 90 days. Yeah. So this is the visual, and you can have all the names over here and things like that. The next one goes as hunting. So as let's say we have, there are two cases. We have Sentinel setup, and then we have matured somehow, but and there are cases we are trying to set it up. So in both the cases, Microsoft has given us some flexibility or some templates to have some analytics over it, right? But let's say if we really want to do some very critical hunting, so we have an application, we have a brute force attack, and then we want to specifically find out the things on that application only. So that's where we come to hunting. Hunting is similar to analytics. We just can create a new hunting rule and then a new hunting query, and then keep it safe, and then keep hunting at times whenever we need to, right? And the more we grow and the more it matures, the hunting goes and or are elevated as an analytics, right? But let's say, we are in a situation that our org has hit an alert or hit an attack. We really want to monitor some things online, so that there's a feature Sentinel offers for live streaming, right? So if I just click on live stream and click a new live stream, and let me name it, you know sign-ins. Sorry, I just name it sign-ins for now, and then we'll try sign-in logs. That's pretty much it. So if I just click on play, what's going to happen is it's going to show me, because I'm the only person basically using this, hunting or the sign-in logs. It doesn't show much results, but yeah, so there'll be a live hunting, seeing it here. And then once we have this satisfactory result out of sign-in logs, we can always create an analytic rule out of it by clicking it here. And if you look at this, the query was automatically copied from that screen to the screen, right? And once we have all these things in place, all the queries in place, right, we can do an entity mapping. So what do we mean by entity mapping? Entity mapping is just a matter of mapping information which might be useful. So for example, within sign log data set, right, we don't need all the columns for an analyst to see at the first place, right? We just need to see the sign-in logs. We just need to see the IP possibly, right? So what we can do in this case is just map full name to kind of user principal name, and then we can add this entity type as IP address as IP address, similar to this. So once we have this created, once we go back to this, I took a more step back. So in the incidents, right, we see the entity mapping, and then that gets, so memory attack detection and failed sign in 10 minutes, right? Yeah. So let's see, the evidence are 18, and these are the entities which are basically getting picked up. And if I just click on view all, so you can see the type of entities we have in here. So that's basically hunting, and then elevating and hunting query to basically to analytic rule. Even same thing can be done in Azure workbooks. So we can create a playground or create a workbook saying we can have 5 queries which we want to observe. So once we save the queries, every time as a song analyst, we come here and then just look at this, and then the next one is notebooks. So notebook is like uh, based on Python and then Jupyter notebooks environment, which Microsoft gives us as a kind of, again, template. And what it happens, what happens over here is, so for example, if you really deeply investigate for anything we have, and it's like an advanced hunting feature which have like templates and my notebooks, both the places. So we can have our own notebooks as well, right? And we can use one of the default out of the box or Microsoft provided workbooks. But in this workbook, we can use Python, we can use machine learning techniques to understand our environment better, all those things better, right? That's pretty much about the notebooks. Yeah, and this is not something we can do it on the first day. This definitely needs some data and some maturity over Sentinel, and then things to go from there. Next one is the entity behavior, and this also is like depending upon the Sentinel maturity. So Sentinel has its own machine learning understanding on everything we create. So every incident we create, Sentinel internally tracks it in a different way. And finally, the entity mapping we do. For example, Windows 7, we have a machine name Windows 7 that has 141 alerts. So if I kind of click here, right, this is a data not gathered in one day, but definitely over a period of 6 months or over the year. So that basically gives all the information, what OS type it has, and what kind of IP address it has used, and what are the heartbeat section for that. Yeah. So that's about entity mapping. And if we come back to TI, right, as I spoke about data connectors. Data connectors is like data connectors is fundamentally like have a connector to put data into threat intelligence, right? And what we do it here is we can just do the same thing manually. So we can, let's say we have very known 2 or 3 IOCs, so we can add the IOCs here, and then once it's saved, we can always use that as a part of analytics. So with that said, and above and beyond all the navigation, I think this is the Bible for everything. If you click on logs on the left hand side, and what happens is whatever you see as a part of data in Sentinel, right, everything is available behind the scene here, because this is the under the hood thing for Sentinel, and we can get everything over here, whatever we want to do. So if we want to say if you want to see office activity, I'll say take one and then finish it. Yep. So that gives office activity, and then if we want to see the security alert, security incident for example, we can have security incident over here, all the security incident what we just saw in the UI. So if we really want to see security alert behind the scene, security alert, yes, that's also there as a part of this, right? So that's pretty much it about Sentinel, and these are the navigations, all right? So with this, I'll just pivot back to my slide. We did a walkthrough, and I will let you have some questions for me. If you have, please. Yep. So, Galen, if you could help me out getting some questions.
Semik, I did see a couple of questions. I don't know if you got to them. One
I
person asked, did you answer him already?
UBA, right? Yeah, I think that was a glimpse. So I'll just quickly show that what user behavior entity analytics is. So yeah. So now,
Fantastic.
yeah. So I'll just quickly jump back to the screen I have, minimize this piece, and where's my Azure Sentinel? Yeah. So in the settings section, we have this configure UBA, which is already configured, and then we have this in threat management, the entity behavior. So it's basically have all the entities. So this is again when the moment you refer back in one of the navigations, right, mostly all of the data coming from log analytics, right? So whatever data we see here, it's kind of a, and there is a settings obviously. So if we click on this audit logs, so it's basically yeah. So Microsoft has an offering, we can combine one or more or select all to have the machine learning behind this to run and then find out the entity behavior analytics, right? So I'll just go back, and then if once we get used to it, the best place is like go to logs and then close this pop window, and let's say, let me try typing entity behavior analytics. That's the table. So and when you try to write this, right, so yeah, there is a lot of data. So it was going to show first 30,000. It has all the UBA data over here, and the best way to know is we say get schema. So the moment you do get schema, right, so that talks about the schema of the table itself, and that gives us like an understanding of so if you look at this investigation priority, right, so if I just try to maybe summarize count by this investigation priority, and let's do by render bar chart. Yep. Or if I change it to area chart. So I think just to understand it, one thing is there's a machine learning running behind that is generating the data for us. But if we really want to dig down the data, I think I would suggest this is the console we should dig into. And also coming back to the previous place in the navigation and going to entity behavior, this is just a screen what you see. So and Sentinel already have a beautiful screen built up to show us some sort of a kind of dashboard over here, like a summary console, right? So if we go for this, we have this, how many insights are there and what are the events, what is defender link talking about it. That's pretty much it about entity behavior, I'd say. Sorry for this. Yeah. Do we have any more questions for this? But that was a good question. Do we have any more questions with us? Thank you for being a wonderful audience. So with that said, I'd say what next, right? So when you say what next, so I'll share a couple of videos to set up the data in Sentinel, and I would say at this point of time, Microsoft limits the data of log analytics to be stored only for 2 years at max. So if we really want to extend our soft capabilities, so there are different ways we can just move the data, archive the data to a whole storage account or archive to a Azure Data Explorer cluster, and then use it for a further investigation. So this is like a long-term strategy for Sentinel, I would say. And also we have a cheat sheet that's always go to place when you try to investigate and write advanced queries. And finally, GitHub repository for we have a GitHub repository for Sentinel, where we have GitHub repository for all the community contributions, and feel free to contribute or take information from there. And I think that's pretty much it I have for today. So please feel free to have the speaker event. Sorry, the feedback of the speaker and the for me and the event as well. Yep.
Thank you so much, Samek. That was a great session. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be a part of the community. So yep, I'd like to thank you all again, and thank you to the sponsors and the organizers for making it a beautiful platform to share, and to all the attendees. So I'd wish you a good rest of your day based on the time wherever you are. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Thank you for helping make the event a success. All the best to you. Hope to catch you in a community zone sometime later today or on Wednesday.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks.